the spiritual brain parasite. Now, you all know what I'm talking about already. You've run into it before. There's somebody you know, maybe a coworker, maybe you met them at school, or just a friend of a friend. And you've had conversations with them. They're a fairly reasonable type of a person. Maybe you don't agree on everything, but you have a conversation, an adult conversation. Until one day you find the part of their brain the parasite has infected. And as soon as you touch on it, as soon as you begin to disagree with them, their mouth opens, all the orifices on their face light up with this bright light shining out. They start pointing at you and screaming, and they just act with apoplectic rage. You just ran into the brain parasite, and there's no reasoning with these people whatsoever. Now, let's be clear about something. When we talk about leftism, we're not talking about liberalism. Okay? Liberalism would be an argument like, in a technological society, we should ensure that everybody has basic health care. Or, everybody has free speech, even groups like NAMBLA. It's worth it. Or, everybody should have a vote, not just the property classes, not just those who've shown leadership ability. Those are all liberal arguments, and they're debatable. You can have conversations about those topics. But leftism isn't about reason. It's not about arguments. Okay, the leftist will simultaneously have two opposite ideas in their head. On the one hand, they'll be, as happened recently, they'll be screaming at Rushdie, saying that he needs to go back to the Middle East for being Persian, while at the same time screaming that Donald Trump is a racist because he doesn't want to let more Muslim rape refugees into the country. And it's not just heated debate that comes out of these people either. Okay? It is just absolute white-hot insanity rage. Okay, it's not the sort of anger that you get from men debating a contentious topic, maybe even over a few beers and getting quite hot under the collar. No, this is a whole nother level of screaming, childish fits, temper tantrums, and them doing everything they possibly can to destroy you. Whether it's getting you to lose your job, accusing you of a crime, you name it. They will do anything within their power to destroy you when you enact the brain parasite, when you trigger the brain parasite. It's no accident that they keep using that word trigger. Now, one thing that I've been noticing is these parasites, they actually seem to spread like a disease. And to explain what I mean with all of this, well, let's consider the natural disease vectors for society, by which, of course, I mean the homosexual community. Partly through the sheer mechanics of what they get up to, and also the nature of their community, the depravity, the lack of hygiene in general, moral and physical, turns them into the natural carriers, the spreaders of plague, of med-resistant diseases, of you name it. So if, in fact, these brain parasites, this leftist brain parasite that we keep running into, if it's operating like a disease, we should see it absolutely rampant amongst homosexuals. And, well, what do we find? Now, on the one hand, it's important that we separate the gay personality type from the disease itself. And the very fact that there's a gay community means that there's a gay personality type. So don't try and say that I'm making all of this up. If they were just like everybody else, they wouldn't need their own community. They just need their own dating apps. And the gay personality type is very often regressed towards childhood. It's superficial, it's sensual, it's very narcissistic, very emotive. And that's just the typical behavior that you expect from the stereotypical homosexual. That's not the parasite right there. They might act catty, but they're not going to react with that insane, vicious rage. The insane, vicious rage is what we see amongst the hardcore GLBT advocates. And there we do see it. We do see the absolute insanity. And furthermore, we see them engaging in behaviors that are not designed for the sake of the organism. Remember, parasites will often have the host do something to benefit the parasite, which harms the organism. And this is what we see quite often with the chem parties, with the anonymous sex, with the point. It gets to the point where this is no longer about hedonism. This is no longer about pleasure, what these people are getting up to. They're so out of their skull on drugs and collecting every STD in the world in the process. This is insanely destructive behavior. This is not the enlightened self-interest of the hedonist. So yes, we do see this spreading like wildfire, spreading rampantly throughout homosexual circles. And the radical political statements of these people as well. The fact that the GLBT is so pro-immigration, pro-Muslim, when if you could open up a portal between the Middle East and any gay pride parade, you'd have a bloodbath on your hands. No, this is the parasite. This is insanity. And so then how does it spread to other circles? What vectors is it going to spread along? Well, here's the thing. If you take your average limousine liberal, you know, your average open-minded, upper middle class, has a couple of gay friends they hang out with and bring to dinner parties, well, that's not going to be the environment that you have to worry about infections occurring in, right? So even when you have a plague carrier, and they're at a fancy restaurant where all the silverware's been cleaned properly, and there's a fresh washroom, you're not going to catch grids from the toilet seat. Not there. Disease spreads in cloistered areas. Either the cloistered areas of the home, the apartment, of a small number of people hanging out in that sort of location, or in the club. And so who is it that's going to be hanging out with homosexuals in those sort of cloistered areas? Well, we all know the answer, the fag hags. You know, university women trying to prove how open-minded they are, and at the same time, the gay boyfriend offers up, well, A, his behavior makes them look chaste, and B, there's a certain amount of motherhood instinct that's being fulfilled there. So we see these straight girls. They start hanging out with homosexuals on campus and getting drunk with them and hanging out at their places, you know, cleaning up after them, exposing themselves to disease, going to the gay clubs because, oh, they have better music there. Oh, it's so much fun. Nobody's hitting on them. And then bit by bit, and this has been going on for decades now, bit by bit, what we've been seeing is that gay culture has actually been the spearhead for straight culture. It's the bleeding edge. It's about 5 years ahead of straight culture. So as soon as homosexuality is no longer repressed in society, as soon as it's completely open and celebrated, we see all of these gay clubs opening up, with pounding music and sheer hedonism, and shortly thereafter, straight people start doing the same thing. There's another video going around not too long ago about these guys that are into puppy play, and they comment in the video, give it another couple of years and straight couples are going to be doing this. And isn't this exactly what we see? You know, with not just the puppy play, but with everything, the whole style of the mating dance happening in the gay bar eventually trickles out into the straight club. So you no longer pick girls up at bars. You pick them up at clubs nowadays. And just think back to your own experience, your own life in the dating world. You know, where is it that you run in to all these problems? When do you start getting into these really weird scenarios? And it's generally some girl, university educated, has a corporate job, seems white collar, seems perfectly normal, and then next thing you know, she wants you to drive to some house full of African immigrants that are selling cocaine, and you're just asking yourself, how did I even get into this scenario? And of course, the drug dealers themselves. Who are their major client? Who are they associating with? What's their hygiene levels? This parasite, it spreads out. It spreads out like a parasite, like a disease, along the very exact vectors that disease would use. It doesn't just spread like a meme. Okay, the memes being propagated on Tumblr through more and more addictive pornography, those don't tend to infect the person and change their whole manner of cognition. They might tempt the person into exploring those routes and getting involved in those scenarios. But what you'll find is that the person, you know, the guy that comes out of the closet, you know, for up to 3 months after coming out of the closet, he's a normal guy. You can have a conversation with him, and then 3 months later, boom, completely different person. The parasites got into him. He no longer thinks like you or me. It spreads along physical vectors. And so you might be saying, well, could this just be toxoplasmosis? You know, could this just be, you know, that's the parasite. It infects cats and mice, and it infects human beings. It causes a lowering of inhibition, it causes schizophrenia, it causes all these behaviors that you see amongst these batshit leftists. So could it just be toxoplasmosis? Well, no, here's the thing. Toxoplasmosis affects the entire brain. Okay, it turns the whole person weird. It turns them into just a shambling wreck of a human being. Whereas this parasite, it seems very mimetic in nature. It infects one particular aspect of the psyche, leaving the rest of it completely normal. Because when you have the early infection, you know, it'll be somebody that says, you know, oh, this feminism is ridiculous, oh, this racism is ridiculous, oh, et cetera, until you get to the one topic. You get to the one place where they are compromised. And that's when it comes out. That's when you see the pod person. So it can't just be a regular medical infection that's spreading undiagnosed, since the major behaviors are also congruent with what the powers that be want people to be doing. So next you might be thinking, well, could this just be mental illness and crazy people seeking out fellow crazy people to associate with? Because after all, we have a very destructive society right now. We're alienating individuals from their parents, from their community, from other loved ones, from normal modes of behavior. We're constantly bombarding people through the television with these advertisements telling you you're inadequate if you don't have this product, you need to live this way even though it's unsustainable, etc. You know, couple that with the broken nuclear family, with the way that we're just exploiting the young for finances and putting them into untenable positions. Yeah, we've got a lot of mental illness going around. So is that all this is? You know, a bunch of crazy people going onto Tumblr and finding out there's other people that want to wear fursuits, and so now they have a convention. Well, no, it's not that either. Because people that have mental illness, Most of the time. But mental illness that's been triggered through trauma. They have an interesting response to religion. They seek it out. They seek out the comfort from religion. Whereas these people, the pod people, try mentioning the name Jesus Christ around them. They will break out in a cold sweat. Watch. See if you can spot their pulse through their forehead or their neck. Watch their pulse when you start talking to them. They're going to become a bit more animated. They'll probably laugh. They'll pretend they don't care. But they'll get truly upset if you mention the name Jesus Christ. And there's also their propensity to love dark symbolism, to love Satanism, to mock religion, whereas the actually mentally ill person, that person often seeks the comfort of religion. And so all this leads me to conclude that there's something going around in this society, something that's partly physical, because it spreads along the physical vectors of disease, and yet has a spiritual component that infects, that possesses a certain part of the human brain. And now maybe this is all just bunk, but I tell you what, it makes way too much sense. Take care of yourselves, folks. Deus Volt. Aurini out.